What's up, YouTube? It's Aerith, your favorite evoker, and I'm here today to bring you my quick start Mythic Plus guide for augmentation. So I've finally been given a chance to experiment a little bit. I did some 26 to 27 keys on it, and let me tell you, it feels very, very good. There's nothing like looking down at the DPS charts and seeing two people doing over a million damage, and just knowing that you are the reason why that damage is enabled. It's a very cool feeling. It's definitely a brave new world that we're entering into, with Blizzard opening up the doors to support specializations. I personally think this might be the first of many. But that's neither here nor there, and maybe content for another video altogether. Let me know in the comments how you feel about support specs in general. That said, let's just go ahead and jump straight into it. I want to give you kind of an overview of the class, how to play it, and just show you how to min max some little things that'll help you improve as an augmentation evoker in some of these higher keys. So first things first, talents. This is what I would recommend as a baseline set of talents. There are some tweaks you can make on a dungeon by dungeon basis. All of this will be included in my full on guide, which will be coming in the near future. I want to give it a little bit more time to marinate. I want to let the community kind of figure some things out. I want to figure some things out on my own, and just come back to you with even more information once we get into the specifics. There is one thing that I did want to note, and that is that while we do have all of the same utility, we have a kick. It is of course shorter for augmentation than preservation. We have a root, we have a knock up, we have a push forward, we have rescue, we have a pressing roar. All these things are important pieces of utility that all evokers do share. There is some interesting utility that is specific to augmentation. So basically, this particular talent, Draconic Attunements, gives us two interesting things. We can effectively stance between black and bronze attunements. While you're learning the spec, I wouldn't worry too much about dancing. You could probably just get away with key binding black attunement if you're a little bit uncomfortable with the stance. And basically, what black attunement does is it's a fortitude. It gives your nearest allies 4% increased maximum health. The bronze attunement, of course, gives your nearest allies 10% increased movement speed, which is also quite potent. You will switch back and forth between these when you are pressing hover and when you're pressing obsidian scales. Obsidian scales will put you in black attunement, giving your nearest allies 4% increased health, and hover will put you into bronze attunement. So generally speaking, in Mythic Plus, being in Black Attunement is going to be the go-to. You almost always want to be in Black Attunement, just to make sure that you're surviving some of these damage checks, which are of course at an all-time high. Um, so one of the most important things about this, though, and what makes it very, very, very broken, part of what makes the spec broken in general, besides the fact that it's just giving everyone gobs and gobs of damage, is this single talent here, Aspect's Favor. This is probably the most broken talent they've ever included in the game. And basically, what it says is that Obsidian Scales activates a Black Attunement and amplifies it to increase maximum health by 16% for 14.5 seconds. So we have two charges of Obsidian Scales thanks to Obsidian Bulwark. Obsidian Scales, of course, being our defensive, personal defensive. So every time we press our personal defensive, we give our all of our allies in our Mythic Plus group a rally. Everyone gets 20% increased health. This can help with living one shots. This can help when your tank dips low. This can help into any given damage event. When you're talking about having two charges of this that are only on a 90-second recharge, and also having Zephyr, you will basically want to be pressing one of these two buttons for every single damage event. This is one of the most important things you could possibly be doing as an augmentation evoker in high keys, is ensuring that every single damage event either has a Zephyr or has a obsidian scales, which is of course your rally. Zephyr is of course a reduced cooldown for augmentation by way of interwoven threads, which I would most definitely recommend that you play in Mythic Plus. So that's kind of the first piece of advice that I wanted to tell you before getting too much into the rotation. Is that as an evoker, you are as an augmentation evoker, you're very much responsible for the defensive strategy of your team. You should be working with your healer, communicating with them, letting them know, hey, I can press Zephyr on this damage event. Hey, on this next damage event, I can press Obsidian Scales. Hey, I have another Obsidian Scales charge. It's my last one. Do you want me to press it into this damage event or the next one? You can be in constant communication with your healer to make sure that you're giving them what they need. And this is, of course, part of the support class fantasy, which is one of the things that feels so cool. You'll have some healers like me who, if you have an augmentation evoker in your group, you're going to be very, very micromanaging and tell them, hey, Zephyr this. hey, Obsidian scales this, hey, Obsidian scales that. Because a lot of healers, especially ones that are well aware of the damage events, the damage intake, their own cooldowns, and kind of know exactly what they need to get through things, will want to min max your usage based on their cooldowns. And that is probably the most optimal way to do it. That said, if you're playing with a healer who is not very communicative, or if you're not in comms, you should make sure that you're pressing these buttons early and often. You want to press them for every single damage event that you possibly can. And I think what you will find is that you can basically press them for every damage event. It's really broken. It's part of what makes this spec such a joy to play and so interesting. So that said, that's our defensive. That's going to be do it for our defensive discussion. Let's also talk a little bit about our offense. So this is the main reason why people are bringing augmentation evokers. I mean, aside of course from the broken utility, the broken defensiveness, is the fact they're also giving an absolutely monstrous amount of damage. So for our general rotation, the spec revolves around one simple thing, and that is something called Ebb and Might. So this little button right here is what is called Ebb and Might. You'll see when I press it, I'm going to get this little bar here, and I'm going to get this one here. And what these do is we're effectively giving our allies stats. And our main goal in this spec is to press Ebb and Might, and to then use our extenders to keep Ebb and Might up. This is what we call an uptime spec. Ebb and Might is the spell in which we are trying to acquire uptime of. So we cannot have perfect uptime of Ebb and Might unless you can absolutely can. But mechanics are going to make us move. It's going to be a challenge always to make sure that Ebb and Might is up as much as possible. But that is, of course, our goal is to maintain as high uptime as we possibly can of Ebb and Might. This is the central core mechanic of this class. And it is what makes the class so fun. As you can see, I'm giving a lot of intellect to Vala here. So this is the first thing that I think is important to note. Before getting into how we extend our Ebb and Might, let's talk a little bit about some of our other spells. So Prescience is probably arguably our second most important spell. This is something that we are going to be maintaining on two characters. This is the Prescience icon here. You can see it in my HUD. So you don't actually have to target with Prescience. When you press it, it will simply give 3% crit to one of your allies. You could actually maintain this buff on two players at once. That said, the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you're pressing it literally off cooldown. So you see I gave this evoker over here the 3% crit as well. And now you're going to see happen is it's going to fall off of Vala here. And when I press it again, he's going to get it back. So effectively, the gameplay revolving around Prescience is to be juggling this spell between two players. You can target if you so desire. I can give it to Vala again here, as you can see, and just override it to make sure it doesn't go on some other person. But it's going to most likely be optimal in almost every situation to just be giving it to two players and making sure that it is being juggled. Again, it won't be 100% uptime on both, but it will be pretty good uptime on each, as long as you're pressing it literally off cooldown. As you can see, it'll go on this person. The next time I press it, it will go on Vala, and it will just keep ping-ponging kind of back and forth. So there's a little bit of min-maxing you can actually do with this, where there are going to be some situations where it's just better for one player to get two consecutive crit buffs. I think some notable ones are a priest who's in Giga CDs, and maybe the other player doesn't have CDs and they're a little bit dry. Maybe like a mage outside of combust, or a warrior that's maybe just outside of CDs and isn't going to get as much value in that moment. You can min max it in that way. I mean, these are just examples I'm coming up with off the top of my head. And I would work on talking with your DPS to find out hey, are there times when this is less relevant for you? And when I should not use it. But generally speaking, I would suggest that you just fire it off on cooldown and forget about it. Press it literally off cooldown, and you never want to miss a cast. So the next thing that I want to talk about is blistering scales. So this goes on the tank. It's gonna give an absorb. Let's just go ahead and read it. So blistering scale says protect an ally with 15 explosive dragon scales, increasing their armor by 30% of your own. Melee attacks against the target cause one scale to explode, dealing volcanic damage to enemies near them. This damage can occur once every few seconds. Blistering scales can be placed on one target at a time. Cast on your enemy's target if they have one. So this is a very simple spell. We are simply going to put it onto the tank and forget about it. Of course, we don't have a tank in this party. So I'll just put it on valid and then we will forget about it. And that is effectively just going to be something that you press whenever it is falling off. And you can just press it honestly off cooldown. Just keep it on the tank. So these are effectively the two spells that we are juggling that have nothing to do with our Ebon Might. So let's double back and let's talk a little bit about Ebon Might again. So Ebon Might is the central mechanic of this class, as I mentioned. We have a couple of things that we are going to use inside of our Ebon Might window to extend it and to provide additional buffs to our allies. One quick note on Prescience though. With the talents, which you most certainly will be playing, is uh, when you're pressing Prescience, it has a 35% chance to grant you Essence Burst when you press it for one, and also Prescience grants the ally a chance for their spells and abilities to echo their damage or healing, dealing 15% of the amount again. So thanks to Fate Mirror, we're actually getting quite a lot of damage just from pressing Prescience. So when I give Valid Prescience, all of his spells have a chance to echo and do their damage again. So it's just additional damage. So there's a very high incentive to make sure that you press this button literally off cooldown. You never want to miss it. It is so important. This is like it's just so important. Always press that button. Um, so that said, let's go ahead and get back into the Ebonmite discussion. So we mentioned Ebonmite being a thing, and so Ebonmite is going to be applied. We have a couple ways of extending it. The first and most notable way is, of course, with our filler spell, Eruption. As you can see, when I press this, I'm getting plus 1 second. And when I crit, I'm getting plus 1.5 seconds. Um, that is the first way to extend Ebon Might. The second way to extend Ebon Might is with our Empower spells. So our first Empower spell is one that is unique specifically to Augmentation and is called Upheaval. Upheaval serves as a form of CC. It also extends our Ebon Might and it deals some damage. So effectively what it says is gather Earth and Power beneath your enemy's feet and send them hurtling upwards, dealing 55,000 volcanic damage to the target and nearby enemies, increases the duration of your active Ebon Might effects by 2 seconds. Empowering expands the area of effect. So you can generally send this on one, but if you really need to, you do have the option of making it a much bigger area. If there's a whole bunch of mobs and they're kind of spread out, you might want to do that. That said, generally speaking, just a one or a two is good enough. And if you've chosen your mob carefully, just sending it on one is generally going to be pretty okay. Um, and the second spell that I wanted to note is, of course, Fire Breath. Fire Breath grants the Inferno's, thanks to Inferno's Blessing, Fire Breath now grants something called the Inferno's Blessing for 9.6 seconds to you and your allies affected by Ebon Might, giving their damaging attacks and spells a high chance to deal an additional fire damage. So Fire Breath is also going to extend our Ebon Might, and is also going to give us some extra damage. So basically, our general Ebon Might window is going to look something like this. We're going to press Ebon Might, going to press Fire Breath, going to press Upheaval, and we're going to revert to spamming eruptions. And that is the basic flow of just the Ebon Might window. Again, inside this window, we will also be refreshing Prescience. We will also be refreshing our scales on the tank as well. And these are the basic tenets of the class. That is effectively what we're looking to do. So let's put it all together now and show you sort of what the whole picture of this spec is going to look like. We might go Ebon Might into a Fire Breath, into an Upheaval, into an Eruption, all while maintaining, of course, Prescience and Blistering Scales. And so that's like generally the flow of it. Again, always press Prescience pre-pull if you're out of combat. Always. It comes up, instantly press it. Comes up again, instantly press it. Doesn't matter. You need to press it. The only situation where you might slightly delay it is if you're going to lose your Ebon Might. But even then, I think you're just really prioring this spell. So it'd be something like Prescience, Ebon Might, Fire Breath, Upheaval, and Eruption spam. Spamming Eruption. We get Prescience back. So we're gonna Prescience. Maybe refresh our tank with the scales. And continue. And so this is the basic flow of this class. Prescience comes back, we press it again. And doing this, we should be able to have some pretty good Ebon Might windows. Other than that, some other things to talk about. The other thing to talk about is our major cooldown. So this is very, very important, and this is why the spec is so, so, so broken. So Breath of Aeons is it replaces Deep Breath. This is our powerful this is our powerful 2-minute ability. Almost always, whoops, I accidentally popped my potion here. That's okay. Almost always we will want to press Breath of Aeons when our Shadow Priest is sending their power infusion. Ideally, this is also inside of a lust window. You want to line up as many things you possibly can. That said, if you don't have a Shadow Priest, you're going to be pressing this at the same time as your 2-minute class presses their 2 minutes. Right now, Shadow Priest is very good, so you can look to be pairing it with PI almost always. It's the most surefire way. But if you don't have a Shadow Priest, you can talk with your DPS beforehand and try and come up with a solution that works the best for all of you. You obviously want to maximize your amount of casts, and so pairing it with 2 minutes is the most ideal. Um, I mentioned how you want to be talking with your healer to min-max your Zephyr and min-max your Obsidian Scales usage by way of Aspect's favor. You also want to be talking with your DPS in order to min-max your usages of Breath of the Aeons. And so when you're doing that, as you're approaching a pack, you might be saying, hey, are we going to send a go on this pack? I see you have power infusion in 20 seconds. Are we sending on cooldown or are we holding? Just be asking these questions constantly. Are we sending here or are we holding? Are we sending or are we holding? These are words that you should become very familiar with and acquaint yourself with. Always be in communication. Um, so that said, your typical go will look something like this. And I have my assistant here kind of standing by. Let's see if he is ready. So pre-pull, if you're ready, I might do a little countdown here. So pre-pull, we'll want to be buffing our tank. So we're about to pull this boss, right? So pre-pull, we're putting up our buttons with Prescience. And here we go. We're gonna send Heaven Might, hit the scales, Fire Breath, Evil Breath inside that window. And we can start spamming Eruption. We Prescience again. And we keep spamming Eruption. And we're gonna Prescience again here. Our filler is, of course, Living Flame. So we're going to be spamming Living Flame. And it looks like we're about to lose uptime. We can refresh since it's inside the pandemic window. We get another Fire Breath on this refresh. Upheaval. And we're going to refresh our Prescience. Keep spamming Eruption. I might have made some little minor errors here, but this is the general flow of things. I think I delayed a Prescience cast by a few seconds there. We'll press Prescience again here. But this is the general flow of how this spec is going to play in Mythic Plus. Very important again that you are pairing with your DPS's 2 minutes. So that said, let's just go ahead and look at some general gameplay footage. We'll let Bella keep beating on these target dummies. Let's take a look at some footage from my last key that I did. What's this? All right, so again, this was my first night playing it, and we were playing some 27 keys. So I was like kind of getting used to it. But was I think doing a pretty reasonable job. Later when I look back at the logs, I saw a pretty good uptime. This is just some of my buddies. We had a friend healer step in so that I could play some Aug, and he was a really good sport. Yeah, so going into the pool, I've already been talking with our Shadow Priest here, and she's told me like, yeah, we're gonna send into this pack. Initially, we so you can see me going in. Initially you'll see me pre-pull, press a Prescience. We're looking at the timer and we realize like we have to pull this onto the next pack. So I actually delay the Ebb and Might here. Because we want to go like with full CDs. So we tell our tank to go ahead and pull everything, or else we're probably gonna fail the key. And so we pull everything here. I press Ebb and Might, tip the scales Fire Breath, I Breath of Aeons. I get on the other side, I immediately upheaval. And I start spamming Eruption after refreshing my Prescience. I did miss the initial Prescience cast, but as you can see, that's kind of the general opener that I just showed you. The more you play it, the more solid it will feel. I have been playing this spec for a very short period of time. While I have done decent bit of theory crafting on it, I'm still like, working out the muscle memory and so forth. And also in like 27 keys, I was like playing very cautious. Another thing you'll see me do here is as we go into this first Condescent that the Blazewing is doing, I know that that's going to be big AoE damage. So you'll see me press my Obsidian Scales to give everyone a rally, and then still maintain uptime of Ebb and Might with that Obsidian Scales rolling. I chose this pack to kind of show you sort of how to play it because I feel like this is a good pack that showcases kind of the offensive prowess and the defensive prowess of the spec in general. And as you can see, our two DPS are just doing like absolutely nutty damage. I mean, we can go back to their burst. I'm sure it's like actually crazy. I've seen like some polls like with certain players when everyone has everything. So it looks like Caitlyn's gonna hit 1 million. The Druid hits like 1.12 million. I've seen numbers as high as 2 million on certain polls with certain classes. It's really crazy like how much damage you actually give. A lot of the combat hooks are also broken, so it's like impossible to tell like how much damage you're actually adding at the time being. But I think that these things will be fixed. And so that's kind of the basic flow of sort of how this spec plays. I do miss looks like a slightly delay the prescience there. That's not good. Definitely press prescience like off cooldown here. But you'll see me basically maintaining this up in my buff for almost this entire pack with relative ease. I think it actually does drop off here. I think we might get did we get one more incandescence? No, the bird's dead. Yeah. But that's kind of the general flow. We can take a look at a boss if you'd like as well. I can see what that's like. Here's another go. Let's see if we got the go right here. Oh, this is the same go. So here we have another go. A little bit late on this Aeons. You want to be sending it as the PI pops, or like just a few globals into the PI. Maybe like two globals late on this one, something. I think it's still pretty good. But yeah, this is the basic flow of the spec. Just some key notes to point out. Always be in direct communication with your healer, talking about when you're going to be using your defensive cooldowns. You have a lot of them, and you should be pressing them tons throughout the key. Tons and tons and tons. It matters so much. Always be in direct communication with your DPS, particularly your Shadow Priest, because you want to be syncing your Breath of Aeons with their cooldowns, with Power Infusion specifically. This is very, very, very critical. Um, yeah, that said, I think that's all I've really got for this sort of preliminary video. I do expect to get a much longer video where I get in depth and kind of break down the rotation and just have everything in a much more organized fashion. But I did want to put something else because a lot of people have been asking for an augmentation guide. And I haven't exactly had a million years to sit around making one because we've been experimenting in the keys and not really sleeping a lot because yeah, very, very fun patch so far. Really, really enjoying it. That said, let me go over to my hanging out screen. That said, thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure that you click the subscribe button and that you follow. Make sure you also follow me over on Twitch at twitch.tv/eyelash TV, where you could probably find me streaming right now because I'm a degenerate and I stream all the freaking time. Let me know in the comments what you think about preservation. I'm sorry, about augmentation. Is this the future of the game? Will they put more support specs in? Is this a good thing for the game or is it a bad thing for the game? If you want my quick little TLDR, I think it's great for the game. I think it's super cool. I hope that they add more support specs. I hope that they keep making the keys more and more dangerous and then add support specs that work with the healer to have like a sort of two-person tag team to make sure this puzzle is solved. I also like the idea of a spec that is working with the DPS to make sure that the offensive plan is also going off without a hitch. It's just a really cool rule in general and a really cool idea. And if you really love it, I'm very happy for you. I myself probably going to remain to be a healer, but that said, I really enjoy this role quite a lot, and I could see myself playing more of it. Yeah, that said, I love you guys. Thanks for sticking around. I will see you soon.